One of my all-time favorite movies is The Vikings. The 1958 movie starring Kirk Douglas, Tony Curtis, Janet Leigh, Ernest Borgnine. It is, well, it centers around Vikings, and I have Vikings in my ancestry, so that's one reason I like it a lot. But all in all, it's a great movie. It's a classic, and it's just always been one of my favorites. But I've always had some issues with it, with the way the story was. There was a lack of backstory, gaps in the storyline, and it ends abruptly with loose ends untied. I had a burning desire to just rewrite and thought of all the changes I would make to the story, not to mean it as an insult to the first movie. Well, it turns out I was not alone in my thinking. Some producer and director thought that way when the movie was just new, and did a loose remake of it, which came out in 1961, just a few years after the Vikings came out, and that movie is called Erik the Conqueror. So, yeah, I just now discovered that movie a few weeks ago, less than a few weeks ago. Movie entirely flew under my radar until I was looking at the Vikings article on Wikipedia and discovered that Erik the Conqueror had been made a few years after it and was loosely based on it. Of course, I got the spoiler by reading the Erik the Conqueror article, but anyway, I got the DVD to watch it, to see how it was. And, for one, it was originally filmed in Italian, but the DVD has the option of setting it to English audio. You can also put subtitles, although the audio and the subtitle words are rarely the same word for word. It's paraphrased as much as possible. I guess the subtitles are the more direct translation of the Italian, but whatever. But I do have to say it is better than the Vikings. Some people watching that will probably accuse me of blasphemy for saying that. But yes, Erik the Conqueror, it satisfies, it cures all the things I found wrong with the Vikings while still staying true to the Vikings movie. Like, so many things happen in Erik the Conqueror, and you can't help but think, yeah, they did that in the Vikings. But the touch-ups, it provides an explanation for everything that happens. There's nothing that leaves you wondering, which the fault I found in the first one. I'll just comment on a few things. And first of all, the actors aren't as good as the Vikings. And that they probably didn't have the money for a better quality cast, I would imagine. But still, the first one, Kirk Douglas, Tony Curtis, Ernest Borgnine, can't really compete with that much, but, the story's well written. A few comments here and there. the Aaron, who is the equivalent of Einar from the first movie, he has the same ambitions as Einar, but he has his moral limits too. So, I mean, he's like, he tries to only kill people as a last resort. Then there's the equivalent character of Erik, who's actually, in this movie, Einar's full-blooded brother. In the first movie, he's a half-breed Englishman and Viking who gets captured by the Vikings as a baby and raised a Viking slave. In this movie, the situation's reversed. He's a Viking royalty who gets stranded in England and raised English royalty. So, and it reverses a lot of things. Kind of like, the story of the first movie kind of is more favorable toward the Viking pagan religion than the Christian English religion. They kind of make them out to be more the bad guys. And here it's kind of reversed. They make the pagan religion out to be the barbaric and give a more favorable position to the Christian religion, which if you're a Christian, you probably feel better about. You feel less insulted, but, you know, that, for me, that's a more minor issue. Egbert is the one character I thought was too underdeveloped in the Vikings. His equivalent, Rufus, is a much more developed character. Actually, he's the villain of the movie. You know, he's trying to take over the English throne, conspires with the Vikings to do it, but, you know, he has the evil agenda. Egbert, you don't really know what his motive is, and that's one of the gaps that I found. There's no backstory on him. So, that's one thing. They developed him as the bad guy, which is not what I would have had in mind, but at least it's an improvement. So, so that's a plus there. But, all in all, well, they didn't have the axe throwing in the first movie where they, accused they were throwing axes at the woman accused of being unfaithful to her husband. Of course, real Viking culture, women were treated with more respect, and that's another thing. This movie is more true to real-life Viking culture. But, they use more explicit language than being unfaithful to her husband. And the movie, all in all, is a little more risque. There's some skimpier dressing in the Viking women. That's true. Oh, and the voting. When they were voting for, the Vikings are voting for their leader. The way they vote, they throw axes at poles. Each pole representing the candidate of their choice. And whichever pole has the most axes, that's the winner. Well, I think we should adopt that style of voting. It would address our voting issues. It would, you know, instead of punch cards or button pushing, throw axes. Except instead of throwing them at wooden columns, throw them at the actual candidates. Yeah, that's what we need. Yeah, throw the axes at the actual politicians. But anyway, Erik the Conqueror, masterpiece. See it if you can get your hands on it.